If you're constantly thinking about food while dieting, that might actually be a sign that your fat loss plan is actually working against your biology. And you may start to believe that hunger is something that you're supposed to just tolerate, something you're supposed to ignore. But unmanaged hunger isn't simply just a side effect of dieting. It's usually the reason why your diet probably will fail in the next few weeks. Because hunger builds meal after meal, day after day. And if your food is constantly leaving you unsatisfied, your body, I promise you, will not stay quiet about it. It starts compensating and you start to think more about food. Your cravings get a lot stronger and you start snacking a little bit more. And eventually that calorie deficit becomes maintenance or even a calorie surplus. And that's not simply because you don't know what a calorie deficit is. It's because you're trying to maintain a calorie deficit while fighting against one of the strongest survival systems your body has to offer. So the real question isn't simply about how do I eat less? It's more so why do some meals keep me full while others make me feel like I haven't eaten at all, even if the calories are the exact same? Because if hunger is the very thing that breaks your diet, then fixing hunger might be more important than cutting more calories. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Becca, and in today's video, I'm going to show you something that I wish every woman learned before starting another diet. You're going to learn about why hunger isn't simply just about eating less. We're going to go over why some meals leave you naturally satisfied, while others can leave you hungry or even starving within the next 30 minutes to an hour, even if the meals are the exact same calories. And by the end of the video, you're going to learn how to build meals that will keep you satisfied instead of constantly fighting against your body. Because once you understand why your body feels hungry, making or keeping that calorie deficit becomes so much easier for you. And if you've been following my channel for a while now, you will already know that I'm much less interested in giving you another meal plan and much more interested in teaching you exactly how nutrition works. Because remember, your body is essentially going to last you a lifetime. In fact, everything that I'm teaching you in today's video comes from the exact same principles that I teach in my 8-week body recomposition program to help women build meals they can stay consistent with. But today, I simply want you to understand the system, because once you do, it becomes so much easier to understand. And before we get into the video, I'm curious to know, what is the one thing that simply gets in your way, especially when it comes to nutrition? Is it constantly feeling hungry, nighttime snacking, cravings, emotional eating, or never feeling satisfied after meals, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. I try to read every single one, and they do help me shape future videos on this channel. All right, so let's start with something that completely changed the way I think about hunger. So imagine your body every single day is trying to answer one simple question: have I eaten enough right now? And most people assume that there's only one hunger hormone or one simple switch that decides whether we are hungry or full. But that's not how it works. That's super oversimplified. Instead, your brain acts more like a committee. So every time you eat, it's collecting data or evidence from different parts of your body, even before deciding whether you should keep eating or whether you've had enough and it's time to put that fork down. So I like to think of this as the hunger vote. Instead of one hunger signal making the decision, multiple signals get a vote. So your stomach gets a vote, your intestines get a vote, the protein in your meal gets a vote, the fiber in your meal gets a vote, the amount of water content in your food gets a vote as well. How long it takes you to consume your meal gets a vote as well. Even your previous eating experiences influence this as well. And none of these signals decide hunger on its own. Instead, your brain weighs all of that information together before making the best prediction that it can. And it says, should I keep asking this person to eat? Also, keep in mind that your brain is not directly measuring its calories. It doesn't necessarily know that you've eaten 500 calories for your lunch. Instead, it's predicting biological signals that have historically helped to predict how much energy you've consumed. And most of the time, the signals work pretty well. But the problem is, our modern environment has become so good at sending confusing signals. So some foods can provide a lot of calories without providing much evidence for your brain to acknowledge fullness, which means you can finish eating, consume a lot of calories or plenty of energy, and still feel like you're missing something or feeling like you need to eat another meal, snack, something. And that's why hunger isn't simply about eating less. It's about the quality of information that your meals provide to your brain. And once we begin to understand this concept, your fat loss journey will become less of a struggle and much more like you kind of got a grip on it. All right, so let's go ahead and look into what influences that hunger vote, the fullness equation. So if your hunger is decided by multiple votes, the next question becomes, which vote carries the most weight? And over the years, researchers have identified several characteristics of what makes a food actually filling. And when you combine them together, they create what we will call the fullness equation. Now, the more of these factors that your food or your meals contain, the stronger the signals will tell your brain we've eaten enough. And let's go through them. Number one, volume. Now imagine eating 500 calories of vegetables, potatoes, or even lean meat versus 500 calories from chocolate chip cookies. Now these calories might be identical, but the amount of food on your plate will look completely different because foods that create a lot of water and air physically take up more space. And that means they stretch the stomach more during a meal, which is one of the many signals that contribute to fullness. Again, it's not the only vote, but it matters. Number two, energy density. Now, this is one of the biggest concepts that I wish more people understood. Energy density simply means how many calories are packed into a given amount of food. So some foods provide a large amount of food for relatively few calories, and others provide a large amount of calories in just a few bites. Now, neither type of food are inherently good or bad, but if your goal is fat loss, of course, choosing the more lower energy density foods makes it easier to create satisfying meals without dramatically increasing the amount of calories that you're intaking. And you're improving the evidence your brain naturally receives. Number three, fiber. Now, fiber is another important piece of this puzzle. Many high fiber foods take longer to digest and often require more chewing. This also helps slow the movement of food through your digestive system. And for many people, this contributes to a longer lasting feeling of satisfaction when it comes to fullness. And one of the greatest things about fiber-rich foods is they often score very well in several categories at once. They're usually higher in volume, lower in energy density, and require more chewing. One food, multiple votes. Number four, chewing. Now, this is one of the most overlooked parts of hunger because not all foods are eaten in the same way. Some disappear within seconds. Others require a bit more chewing, biting, slowing down, taking your time, and spending more time to eat. And why does this matter? Because while you're eating, your brain is constantly collecting sensory information. And the longer a meal takes naturally to eat, the more opportunities your body has to register that more food is coming. And this is not about forcing yourself to eat painfully slow. It's simply about recognizing the structure and the texture of food can influence how satisfying a meal is. Number five, now this is the one we all know and love. Protein. Protein is one of the strongest contributors of fullness because protein digestion stimulates hormones involved in satiety and generally requires more energy to break down than your carbohydrates and your fats. Now, meals containing a higher amount of protein tend to keep you satisfied for longer compared to meals that have relatively low amounts of protein. And that's why protein is so important, especially along your body recomposition journey. It doesn't just help support your muscle, it makes it easier to maintain that caloric deficit. Number six, meal experience. Now, this is probably something that most people don't talk about. Your brain learns from experience, and every meal teaches your brain something. If a certain type of lunch leaves you consistently hungry an hour later, your brain begins to expect that outcome. But if another meal reliably keeps you satisfied all afternoon, your brain recognizes and remembers that as well. And that's the reason why consistency matters. You're not simply just nourishing your body. You're teaching your brain what a satisfying meal looks like. So if we zoom out now and get our bird's eye view, fullness isn't created by one nutrient. It's created by multiple biological signals working together. So you don't have to rely on motivation. You don't have to hope until your cravings completely disappear. You can intentionally build meals that cast a stronger vote for your fullness. And that's exactly what we're going to do next. So you can start looking at any meal and ask, how can I make this meal more satisfying? Now that we understand what influences fullness, the next question becomes, how do we actually use this information information. Because knowing protein is important or fiber helps doesn't automatically tell you whether the meal in front of you is likely to keep you full. And this is where we can use a simple framework called the satiety score. Now, the goal isn't to label foods as good or bad. It's to ask one simple question: how likely is this meal to keep me satisfied? Because here's something that I wish a lot more people realize. Meals don't have to be completely erased or replaced. They usually need to be improved. So instead of asking, what should I completely eliminate? I encourage you to ask, what is missing in this meal? And that's a completely different way of thinking about nutrition. So instead of focusing on restrictions, you're actually looking for opportunities to build a more satisfying meal. So when I look at a meal, I mentally check for 6 things. Does it have enough volume? Does it contain enough protein? Is the overall energy density reasonable? Will it take time to eat? Does this meal include fiber? Is this a meal that has consistently left me feeling satisfied in the past? The more yes answers, the higher the satiety score. So imagine a super simple breakfast: 2 slices of toast and a healthy amount of peanut butter. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with eating this meal, but if your goal is to stay full until at least lunch, it might not provide as many fullness signals. Now imagine making a few changes. You can keep the toast and add a side of Greek yogurt. Add some berries, maybe even swap out the peanut butter with some smoked salmon and even some vegetables. Now this is going to be a higher protein meal that's more satisfying. Now you haven't dieted and you haven't completely eliminated foods that you love. You're simply increasing the satiety score of each meal that you consume. Now the same idea works almost everywhere. So instead of having cereal for breakfast, think to yourself, how can I add more protein? Instead of eating pasta by itself, could you add a lean chicken or even vegetables to the meal? Instead of grabbing a muffin for breakfast, ask yourself, could you pair it with a Greek yogurt? Notice what we're doing here. We're not chasing perfection. We're looking for the smallest change that creates the biggest improvement. And this is how sustainable habits are built over time, whether they're cooking at home, ordering at a restaurant, or even eating with family. Because once you start understanding why one meal is satisfying and why the next is not, you stop needing somebody to tell you exactly what to eat. But if calories matters, if fullness matters, then why is it so easy to accidentally eat hundreds of calories from some foods while others leave us feeling full for hours? And to answer that, we need to talk about something I call the appetite gap. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons why some people have a difficult time managing their calorie deficit, because they underestimate how different foods influence their appetite. Now, imagine I put 2 different meals in front of you. Both will contain exactly 600 calories. One has grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, vegetables, and even a side of fruit. And the other one is a specialty coffee with 2 pastries on the side. Same amount of calories, but very vastly different experiences. Now, one meal is going to leave people feeling extremely satisfied for several hours on end, and the other one is going to leave them looking for the closest restaurant before lunchtime. And this is because calories tell us exactly how much energy we are eating, but they don't tell us exactly how satisfying the meal is going to be. And that's what we're going to refer to as the appetite gap. This is the difference between the amount of calories that you've eaten and how satisfied your brain feels after eating them. The larger the gap becomes, the harder it will be to maintain your caloric deficit. And this is because your brain is still collecting evidence and it just doesn't know that you have not eaten enough. Think back to that hunger vote that we talked about earlier in the video. Every meal casts a vote. So some meals send a stronger signal and consistent signals that say, we're good, we don't need to eat anymore. But the other meals that's providing plenty of calories, these send fewer fullness signals. And the result is your calorie intake increases, but your hunger doesn't come down that much. And that's the appetite gap. And this is where I think many people accidentally make fat loss so much harder than it needs to be. All right, so we've talked a lot about hunger, and we've even looked at how your brain decides that you've eaten enough. We've talked about what makes a meal satisfying and why some foods leave you feeling hungry despite eating so many calories. But understanding the nutrition is half the equation. The next step is making those choices a lot easier to repeat. Because here's something I think gets constantly overlooked. You're probably not struggling because you don't understand that chicken has a lot more protein than chips. You're probably struggling because good decisions become harder when you have to make them over and over again. And every day we are making hundreds of decisions. What to eat for breakfast, what to eat for lunch, what to eat for dinner, whether to snack or not, whether to cook or grab takeout. And every decision that you make requires more mental effort. And those decisions are eventually going to add up, leading to decision fatigue. And by the end of the day, when you're busy, you're tired, you're stressed, you're not making decisions with the same mental energy that you had when you started in the morning. And that's why relying on your willpower is such a destructive strategy. Instead, we gotta make better choices the easiest choice. And that starts long before you even sit down to eat. It starts when you go grocery shopping. So one of the simplest habits you can build is learning how to shop with fullness in mind. Instead of asking, what should I avoid? Start asking, what foods will help me build a satisfying meal for this week? When I go grocery shopping, I'm not looking for the perfect foods, but I am looking for ingredients that score highly on this fullness equation. Foods that add volume, foods that have protein, fiber, and that create meals that keep me satisfied. Because if those foods are already in my kitchen, I've made tomorrow's decisions a lot easier. But if they're not, it's so much easier just to choose the most convenient foods when I'm starving. So your environment is constantly influencing your decisions on a daily basis, whether you would like to believe it or not. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is trying to change everything overnight. They'll go into their kitchen and throw away all the foods they deem unhealthy. They'll buy ingredients that they've never cooked with because they saw a viral recipe online, and then download a complicated meal plan, and then wonder why they could not stick to it. Instead, just pick one meal. Maybe start with breakfast and ask yourself, how can I improve the satiety score of this meal? Could you add more protein, fruit, increase the volume? Could you make it more satisfying? Master one meal and then move to the next. At this point, you might be asking yourself, this all makes a lot of sense, but how do I put all of these pieces together? And that's where a structured system becomes extremely helpful. Now, if there is one thing I need you to take away from this video, it is that fat loss does not have to be a constant battle with hunger, because hunger isn't simply something that you need to constantly ignore. It's information, and your body is responding to the evidence your meals provide. And when you start improving that evidence through protein, fiber, volume, food structure, and even a smarter meal design, maintaining a calorie deficit becomes a lot more manageable. Now notice I didn't say effortless. So if you enjoy this video and are looking for more evidence-based nutrition that teaches you how to think, not just what to eat, then make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video.